student, welcome back. Let's start with the last video of this lessons. The last lesson written by Alphonse Daudet. So far, we all are aware that little Franz was very careless student and he was very late for the school that day, and he always tried to find some new excuses to stay away from the school. And he was fun-loving boy and he always ignored his study. He didn't know even a single word of his own language. Here, Mr. Hamel was very strict, very disciplined, and most of the students hated him so much because of his cranky nature and because of his strict and disciplined nature. He was very devoted, he was very dedicated teachers, very faithful to this language, very faithful and very loyal to this country. Here, the day he was very late for the school, he noticed so many people in front of the bulletin board because it had a bad news. Came from Berlin because they want to introduce German language in place of French. When he reached a school, he saw that there was something unusual. There was a pin drop silence. Mr. Hamel talked him very gently, right? He put on his Sunday cloth, his beautiful cloth, which he really put on only on special occasions like Inspections Day and Prize Distributions Day. So many villages were there already there in the classroom, right? And finally, he announced that this is your last French lessons, so I want you to be very attentive. That was a thunderclap. That was a very shocking news for the friends. And then he was thinking all these things, that how he had ignored his study, how he hated so much Mr. Hamel and his grammar book, the history, etc. And now Mr. Hamel made them realize that how precious their language is to them. And at the same time, he said that there are so many things which is responsible for that if you didn't know even a single word of your own language, because your parents always, right? Pehli cheez parents aati hai, they always put you in the work to earn some money, and your teacher also is responsible for that. If whenever Mr. Hamel wanted to go for a fishing, right? उन्होंने उनको छुट्टी दे दी. You always extend and you always put off your work for the next, right? Wow, we have a plenty of time. The way you used, right? ऐसा आप हमेशा करते रहे कि हमारे पास बहुत time है. We will learn all these things tomorrow. Now you can see where you are, right? He said that this language is the logical, clearest and a beautiful language of the world. So, dear student, there are so many other things that I will let you know in this last lecture. See, after the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, Mr. Hamel had new copies for us written in a beautiful round hand. See, grammar के बाद हमारा writing का lesson था. उस दिन मिस्टर हैमल ने हमारे लिए नई कॉपीज लाई थी जिसमें बहुत ही ब्यूटीफुली राउंड हैंड फ्रास अल्सेस लिखा हुआ था. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the school room. वो कैसे लग रहे थे? कितना ब्यूटीफुली लिखा हुआ फ्रास अल्सेस कि छोटे झंडे जो हमारे स्कूल के कमरों में हर जगह लहराते प्रतीत हो रहे थे. hung from the rod at the top of our desk. भी मानो हमारे डेस्क में लगी रॉड्स पर लटके ये छोटे झंडे स्कूल के कमरों में हर जगह लहरा रहे थे. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work. कि भी कैसे सभी लोग अपने काम में व्यस्त थे. How quiet it was. कि भी कितनी शांति थी, कितनी चुप्पी थी. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. एक ही साउंड वहां पे सुनी जा सकती थी. That was the scratching. सरसराहट. पेन के द्वारा पेपर के ऊपर आ रही सरसराहट को सुना जा सकता था. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest one who walked right on tracing their fish hooks, as if that was French too. कभी कभी कोई बिट्टल जब अंदर आते तो किसी ने उसकी ओर ध्यान नहीं दिया. इवन यहाँ तक कि छोटे से छोटे बच्चे ने भी who walked right on the tracing their fish hook, जो उस समय फिश हुक को बना रहा था, ऐसा लग रहा था मानो वो भी फ्रेंच हो या फ्रेंच लिख रहा हो. On the roof the pigeons cooed very low. उसी वक्त एक बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग थिंग्स हुई कि वो जो पिजन है, कबूतर है, ऊपर रूफ के ऊपर कू करता है, वो गुडरगू करता है. आई थॉट टू माई सेल्फ, कि मैं अपने आप से ही सोचा, विल दे मेक देम सिंग इन जर्मन इवन द पिजन्स? क्या जर्मन भाषी इस कबूतर को भी जर्मन भाषा में गाना गवाना सिखाएंगे? Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw Mr. Hamel sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing, then at another. कि जब भी मैं अपने लिखने के दौरान ऊपर देखता, I saw Mr. Hamel बिल्कुल
चुपचाप बैठे हुए थे अपनी चेयर के ऊपर, जो पहले एक चीज को देखते फिर किसी दूसरी को देखते। ऐसा लग रहा था मानो ही वांट टू फिक्स इन हिज माइंड जस्ट हाउ एवरीथिंग लुक्ड इन दैट लिटिल स्कूल रूम। कि वैसा लगता था मानो वो अपने दिमाग में सब कुछ बसा देना चाहते हैं, फिक्स कर देना चाहते हैं कि कैसे सब कुछ उस छोटे से स्कूल के कमरे में दिखता था, या जो कुछ भी वो वहां पे चीजें थी, ही वांट टू फिक्स एवरीथिंग इन हिज माइंड। फैंसी, इट वाज रियली इमेजिनेटिव हियर, यू नो। फॉर 40 years ही हैड बीन देयर इन द सेम प्लेस, क्योंकि पिछले 40 साल से वो इसी जगह पे था। विद हिज गार्डन आउटसाइड द विंडो, उस विंडो के बाहर अपने उस गार्डन के साथ, and his class in front of him. And the same class was there in front of him since 40 years. Just like that, बिल्कुल उसी तरह. Only the desks and benches had been worn smooth. सिर्फ जो ये बेंचेस और डेस्क थे ना, यही घिस कर पुराने हो गए थे. The walnut trees in the garden were taller. वॉलनट का जो ट्री था उसके गार्डन में वो बहुत बड़ा हो गया. And the whole vine that he had planted himself, ये whole vine का वृक्ष जो उसने खुद प्लांट किया हुआ था, twinned about the windows to the roof, कि विंडो से होता हुआ वो रूफ तक बड़ा हो गया था. How it must have broken his heart to leave it all, कि कैसे वश्य ही इन सभी चीजों ने छोड़ने के विचार से उसके दिल को तोड़ दिया था. It was really heartbreaking, right? Poor man, बेचारा आदमी. To hear his sister moving about in the room above, just above the classroom, his sister was arranging his luggage because she was going to pack everything in the trunks, because the very next day he had to leave this place forever. He had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last, but इस आदमी में इतना साहस था कि वो प्रत्येक लेसन को उसने अंत तक सुना. After the writing, we had a lesson on history. राइटिंग के बाद हमारा हिस्ट्री का लेसन था. And then the baby chanted, जो बेबीज थे, छोटे बच्चे थे, उन्होंने स्टार्ट किया चैंट करना, उच्चारण करना, बा बेबी बो बू, right? And the down there at the back of the room, old Hauser had put on his spectacles. Down there, पीछे रूम में ओल्ड हाउसर ने अपने चश्मे लगा दिए थे. And holding his primer in both hand, दोनों हाथों में अपनी पुस्तिका को पकड़ा हुआ था. Spelled the letter with them, इन छोटे बच्चों के साथ वो भी उन लेटर्स को उच्चारित कर रहा था. You could see that he too was crying. आप देख सकते थे कि कैसे वो भी रो रहा था. His voice trembled with emotions. Emotion की वजह से, भावुकता की वजह से उसकी आवाज थरथरा रही थी. And it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. कि भी उसको इस तरह से सुनना बहुत ही फनी था कि हम सभी लोग हंसना चाहते थे. And we wanted to cry करना चाहते. And how well I remember it, कि भी देखिए कितना अच्छी तरह से मुझे याद था that last lesson, कि जो लास्ट लेसन उन्होंने हमें पढ़ाया, whatever he did that day, really मुझे आज भी वो याद है. All at once the church clock struck 12. उसी बीच चर्च 12 बजा देती है, घंटी बज जाती है. Then the angelus, at the same moment, उसी समय the trumpets of the Prussians का भोपू बजता है. Returning from drill sounded under our windows, कि भी हमारी विंडो के अंडर से वो आते हैं, because they were returning from their drill, अपने अभ्यास को खत्म करके वापस आ रहे थे. And Mr. Hamill stood up. मिस्टर हैमल खड़े होते हैं, वेरी पेल इन हिज चेयर, कि भी अपनी कुर्सी से खड़े होते हैं. एंड ही वाज लुकिंग वेरी पेल, बहुत फीका नज़र आ रहा था, बहुत ही पेल नज़र आ रहे थे. आई नेवर सॉ हिम लुक सो टॉल, कि उस दिन उससे ज़्यादा कभी भी मैंने उन्हें इतना लंबा नहीं देखा, टॉल नहीं देखा. इट मीन्स हियर ही वाज सो मच सीरियस, वेरी प्रोफाउंड, एंड माय फ्रेंड्स said he, I, but something choked him. He could not go on. See, he was unable to say anymore. आगे वो बात नहीं बोल सके, because he was so much emotional. Then he turned to the blackboard की ओर मुड़े, took a piece of chalk का पीस लिया, and bearing on with all his might, कि भी अपने पूरे might के साथ, he wrote as large as he could, कि भी इतना बड़ा जितना वो लिख सकते थे, Vive la France, France जिंदाबाद. Then he stopped, फिर वो रुके, and leaned his head against the wall, कि दीवार पर अपना सिर लगा के, and without a word, बिना शब्द के, he made a gesture to us with his hand. अपने हाथ से इशारा करते हैं, school is dismissed, you may go, कि आप अब जा सकते हैं. That's it. That was your lesson number 1 here. Now we will discuss some short questions. What was friends expected to be prepared with for school that day? See, answer of this question is very easy. Mr. Hamill had given them rules on participle to learn, but friends didn't know even a single word of these participle, and that day also he expected to be prepared with these participles. And what did friends notice that was unusual about the school that day? There were so many things which was unusual in the school that day. See, the first thing was when he reached at the school, he saw that there were pin drop silence, and he noticed that his teacher was already in the classroom and his classmates were already in the classroom, and the villagers were there in the unoccupied seat of the classroom. And not only that, Mr. Hamill welcomed him very gently, very kindly talked with him, and he saw that how Mr. Hamill had put on his Sunday cloth, his beautiful cloth, which he rarely put on. What changes did the order from Berlin cause in school that day? See, there were so many changes in the school that day after getting that order from the Berlin. When he reached at the school, Franz was surprised to see the pin drop silence of that school that day. His teacher and his classmates were already in the classroom. He had to go inside the classroom before everybody. He was so frightened, he was very blushed. But Mr. Hamill received him very lovingly, very gently. He talked with him, and villagers were there in the unoccupied seats of the classroom. Not only that, he had put on his beautiful Sunday cloth, which he rarely put on, only on special occasions like Inspections Day and Prize Distributions Day. The people in this story suddenly realize how precious their language is to them. What shows you this? Why does this happen? See, this was Mr. Hamill who let them realize that how precious their language is to them, because this is a language which helps us in our critical situations, right? It is like that of a reason's key. If you hold fast to your language, hold fast to your culture, and hold fast to your traditions, it definitely will help you a lot in your critical situation, and it will really help you when you will need it. What had been put up on the bulletin board? It had the bad news came from Berlin, because they want to introduce German language in place of French, right? In this news, in this bulletin, they had asked the French teachers to leave those schools where they want to introduce the German language. How did friends feeling about Mr. Hamill and school change? See, before this order, friends hated so much Mr. Hamill and school. Now he had changed his attitude toward the Hamill and school. He forgot about the Hamill's cranky nature, his iron order, his strictness, his discipline, and school as well. Right now he is missing everything associated with Mr. Hamill and school. Friends thinks, will they make them sing in German, even the peasants? What could this mean? This is really very important question here, right? German can introduce their language. They can impose their language on you, but they cannot take your love for your own mother tongue, for the French language. That's what it means, right? वो कबूतर को जर्मन भाषा में कभी भी गाना नहीं गवा सकते, right? The same thing is here. If you stick to your language, if you love your mother tongue, so no invader can take your love, and they cannot take away your language from you. When a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prisons. Yes, of course. As long as we hold fast to our language, our tradition, our cultures, this is the only thing which can hold us for a long time. See, if you are enslaved, कि अगर आप दास्तां में है, गुलामी में हो, तो that time it can help us to get together and to help us to raise the voice against exploitations. Very rightly and very aptly said that when a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. Can you think of example in history where a conquered people had their language taken away from them or had a language imposed on them? Yes, of course, India is the appropriate example. Right? British had imposed their language, but they try hard to take our language away from us. But इंग्लिश वॉज ब्लेसिंग इन डिस्गाइज फॉर अस. ये तो हमारे लिए अच्छा ही प्रूव हुआ कि ब्रिटिशर्स आए, बिकॉज इंग्लिश इज द मोस्ट फ्लरिश्ड and well known and widely spoken language in the world, and that's why it is blessing in disguise for us. And at the same time कि हमने अपनी लैंग्वेज के प्रति जो हमारा प्यार था, हमने उसको कम नहीं होने दिया. राइट? Is it possible to carry pride in one's language too far? Do you know what linguistic chauvinism means? See, answer to this question is very easy here. Love for one's language is natural and pride for one's language is natural. But when you stick so much to your own language, when you carry pride in one's language too far, that time it becomes and it shows that you are giving so much importance to your own language. And the same thing is here with the linguistic chauvinism, which gives so much importance to one's language, and you consider others' language small and means. The person who stick to their only language and the person who gives so much importance to their own language and stick to only those words which generations are following, so such person, such language cannot flourish itself. If you want to flourish, if you want to make your language rich and really want to feel proud on your language, it is essential to carry and essential to take so many other words from the many other source and many languages of the world. Right? The person who stick to one thing die in itself.